Hey there everyone, it's Willow Wolf, and today we're going to show you how to paint some fun and simple watercolor trees. I'm using my Watercolor Landscapes Callia Artist brush set. These brushes are a beautiful synthetic sable, so they hold lots and lots of water and paint when you're painting. And I'm going to start with the number 8 round and a little bit of green and yellow. And the first thing I want to talk about is a technique called stacking. And this is going to show you how to kind of give yourself an idea of where to put your shadows and highlights in general. So the first thing I want to do, we're going to do kind of a basic abstract tree here. So I'm just going to move the brush in a bit of a circular motion, filling in. If I leave white spaces, that's great. And this is sort of a bit of an example of an abstract fun tree. Now, while it's wet, this is my first layer, so it's a lighter value. I'm going to make a little bit of green that's less transparent. It's more opaque. And I'm going to start adding a little bit of a shadow in here. And I don't want to cover up all those little white spots I've left. The trick here is that when we add a shadow, it's called stacking. And we're pretending the light is kind of coming in from this side. And that means when I stack the next color on, I want to make sure I see the color that came before it. Now let's make an even darker value. And we're going to stack this on. I'm using Sap Green today with a little bit of Payne's Gray and a little bit of yellow. Now when I stack this on, I want to make sure I don't cover up any of the colors I've done before. So I want to see that lightest value, that medium value, and here's my dark value in here. So by doing that, I have a nice gradation of color from light to medium to dark that's really, really pretty. And that's called stacking. And that's sort of a general rule of thumb with just about any kind of painting, is that you're going to want to see your values show up there. And I'm just going to model that up a little bit more. So there's a cool kind of abstract tree. Now let's try a different shape. And these can be painted really, really quickly. It's a little too much water. I'm just going to take a little bit off, and we're going to paint a little bit of a oblong tree. So I'm just kind of moving the brush, still a bit of a circular motion, but coming down here. Now let's pick up that darker value. Letting some of the white space show through. And you'll notice I'm kind of stroking down this way. So I have a fairly consistent bit of direction. And then my third, which is just a little bit of that Payne's Gray. And that you can see all three of those values sitting on that surface. Now, I'm just going to take a little bit of a dry brush. I want to model this up a little bit more and bring it in. By dry brush, I mean it's still wet, but I've taken off the paint. I want to come out here a little bit. There we go. A fun, almost kind of oblong vertical tree shape. Now let's paint a little tree that's got way more light showing through. So let's do a little shape here. Little one here. Come in the middle. Maybe it's just getting its little leaves. Perhaps it's fuller at the bottom. Okay, lots of background showing through. Let's take a darker value of green. I'm going to start down here. And the green does not, the darker value doesn't just have to touch where you've added the other color. It could come out here and be all by its lonesome over here. Just a few little hints in there. Maybe I want just a little bit of that Payne's Gray. So with painting, 3 values means 3 dimensions. That's kind of the rule of thumb to give you that idea of dimension. Okay, there's a much more sparse tree there. So you can see how with my number 8 round, I get really beautiful, simple tree effects, a little bit more abstract. We could have the light coming from any which way, and you really get to play around a little bit. I'm going to take a bit of burnt umber and add just a touch of that Payne's gray to it. Take off the excess water here. Don't want too much water. And we're going to paint a really simple trunk right in the middle of this one. Just keep it easy. Same thing here. Now on this one, I'm going to actually have the trunk come over here a little bit. You want to see some of the little bits coming through. We can be as detailed, we can come out with little branches. Just have fun with it. Good morning. Hey there everyone, it's Willow Wolf, and we're going to work today with some watercolor landscapes using my Watercolor Landscapes Callia brush set. We're going to play with some background wash techniques. And the interesting thing is, I actually have, I'm using a 3/4 inch wash brush. I have dirty water here, but we're going to let that go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint a wet background here. We're just going to paint a wash over the background. And I want to just take a little bit of blue. I'm using an Ultramarine Blue with a fair bit of water in it. And we're just going to wash over this background with the blue. The beautiful thing with this wash brush is it's a synthetic Kolinsky sable, which means that it's synthetic and animal friendly, but it holds a ton of water and paint. And we're just coming through here with a nice little wash of color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mop brush, which is one of my favorite brushes for watercolor landscapes, and I'm just going to add some little bushes in the background. Just imagining I have a little horizon line there. And the more water, the more it's going to soften in. We're just going to paint those really softly into the background there. And if I wanted it a little bit darker, I just add a little touch. And I love this little mop brush because it gives just these really soft, beautiful, abstract background trees. Now, we're going to let that dry. What I want to do first, though, is just lay down a little bit of color. I'm going to come in and wash in a little bit of green. Again, your wash brush has little tiny etched pockets in it, every single strand, and that's what allows your watercolor to go into the brush and distribute evenly on its way back out. we're just gonna leave that soft little foreground just the way it is. Might just use the chisel edge of the brush. It's got a beautiful chisel edge to kind of come in. Soften that in a little bit. Oh, good wash brush is an essential brush. And let's let that dry. I'm going to just wet the surface again. It's been dry. You can dry watercolor with a hair dryer, or you can dry it with, you can let it air dry, either way. And then I'm gonna take my mop brush again. And once I've wet the surface, I'm gonna take my round and a little bit of that green mix, which is Sap Green with some Payne's Gray. And I just wanna tap some more obvious kind of trees here as kind of a layer of trees that are a little bit closer in view. Just kind of moving that brush from side to side. And it's still kind of, because the background is wet, moves into that wet background just a little bit, which is really, really nice. And then what we want to do is come back over top of our line here. Pick up a bit more green. And I really want to put kind of one nice bigger tree here. And sometimes in my mind, I kind of imagine where I might be visiting that would have a tree just like this. I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray. As you get closer and closer to you, what you're going to have is more detail on the objects that you're painting. Dropped a big splotch of water there. That's okay. We don't get stressed out about those things. Now we didn't do a lot of values in here. I didn't put a lot of yellow in, but let's just take, while we're a little bit wet, I'm just going to take a little hint of yellow and drop some of that in. Just gives us a little glimmer of some additional color there. Now, kind of got excited here. I want to just come into the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit more green. And we've got hills here. And we're going to let that dry again, and then we're going to detail with some little grasses and maybe some flowers in the background and just have a little fun with it. We've let our painting dry, and what we're going to do is just come in and paint a little bit of a tree trunk here. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of burnt umber. Once we've got that in, I'm going to let that again dry a little bit. But what I want to do is kind of put a few more little details on our tree here. I want to just take some paint and make the suggestion of some darker leaves. And sometimes when we're working wet on wet, they just sort of disappear into the background, and we want them to, and it's still a little bit wet. I was maybe not as dry as I should have been here, but that's okay. Just layering. I love the layering effect. Of course, with watercolor. And as much as they say we don't use white, I do. Because I want to pop a little bit of white in there. Okay. What I want to do here now, one of my favorite brushes is the Filbert Comb. I use it a ton. I use it for animals, grass, trees, bushes, and sometimes it's easier just to kind of set this so that we're pulling towards ourselves. And the Filbert Comb makes really nice little bits of grass because of the way the brush has little cutouts in it. So you'll see here, it's kind of coming along there, and it's giving me the appearance of dozens and dozens of little blades of grass in just one shot here. And so this Filbert Comb is definitely one of my favorites. And just kind of this little watercolor worksheet here that we're doing, you could come in and you almost always see a little bit of grass where you've got a little bit of a hill. You can set it on its side, or you can pull up in a more substantial way.